What good is melody? What good is music if it ain't possessing something sweet? It's not the melody, it's not the music. There's something else that makes the tune complete. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do-ah, 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 do-ah. It don't mean a thing, all you gotta do is sing. Do-ah, 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 do-ah. It makes no difference if it's sweet or hard. Just give that rhythm everything you've got. Oh, it ain't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do-ah, 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 do-ah. Makes no difference if it's sweet or hard. Just give that rhythm everything you've got. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do-ah, 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 do-ah. Do-ah, 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 do-ah. Do-ah, 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 do-ah. Written by the great African-American band leader Duke Ellington in 1932. That was a song, I think more than anything else, that sums up the mood and the feeling of 1930s popular music. 1930s is, in my opinion, and the opinion of so many people who really know American popular music and the whole history of it, one of the peaks, perhaps the peak, of creativity. And this afternoon, we're going to be exploring, just touching on different aspects of it, and hopefully having some fun at the same time. So let's talk about swing. The 1930s is known as the swing era. That song, which is from 1932, as I said, it's called It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. So what does it mean by swing? Well, I think Louis Armstrong is quoted as saying, if you need to ask what swing is, you ain't got it. Regardless of that, being a musicologist, I shall attempt to define it for you. There are really two important aspects to swing. Firstly, is the feeling that the music is on the 2 and the 4 rather than the 1 and the 3. Okay, this is the difference. So just take that vamp I started with in that last song. This is on 1/3. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 3 1 3 1 3 1. Okay, here it is on 2 and 4. 1 2 3 4 1. And there, it just feels rhythmically alive and pulsating. You can try clapping along at home. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's helpful if you count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 1, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay, and now the 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2. 1. And at that point, the rhythm takes wings. It just is free. It can fly. And that feeling of swing this is the most important thing about swing, is really peculiar to American music. And it started in kind of the ragtime era and then became increasingly prevalent. And once we reach the 1930s, the ragtime era, of course, being the 1890s onwards, so somewhat earlier. By the time we reach the 1930s, it's become just everywhere in the culture, which is why one of the reasons why the swing era, the 1930s, is known as the swing era. Okay, so that's the essence of swing. There's something else technically, musically as well, which is I play with what's called swing rhythm or lopsided rhythm, which would be this. Instead of this, it's this. So it's like da ba 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 ba. And if you put that under the magnifying glass, what you'll find I'm doing is instead of playing even, but that's where all the notes are even, I'm doing like a long, short. Long, long, short, 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 long, short. So if I just play something and I play even and on 1/3, it should sound pretty terrible. Okay, now put it on 2/4, but keep the even, which is actually quite difficult to do. And I think that just sounds flat out weird, right? And now I'm going to put both things together. And I'm free. The music can just take off. Okay, so that's the essence of swing. And it was very smart of Duke Ellington at the beginning of the decade, the swing era, to put together that song. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. So everything I'll be doing this afternoon, absolutely everything, at some level, will have certainly that 2/4 feeling and probably the uneven note feeling as well. Hopefully, it will all be swinging. Okay, so let's talk about the decade of the 1930s. Above all, the 1930s was defined by the Great Depression, right? That started, historically, it dates from the crash of the American stock market, which was at the end, October 1929, so just a few months before the decade started. And the result was economic misery that in America, we haven't known sort of since at all as a nation. I mean, people were really, really, really suffering. And one of the fascinating things about studying popular music is seeing how the things that are going on in society are reflected in the popular song. For instance, it's very interesting to see how Tin Pan Alley responded to, say, the First World War. There was millions and millions of songs, patriotic songs, funny songs, this kind of song, that kind of song. You can learn a lot about sort of American mentality towards these historical events by looking at the songs around them. And the Depression is no exception to that at all. So in 1931-32, there were quite a number of songs written one way or other that reflected the depressed times. And I'm going to share 3 of those with you now. And they're all going to offer a different mentality, a different way of trying to deal, shall we say, psychologically with the depression. Okay? Way number one is what you might call just like a documentary, just the stark reality of what was going on. A man serves in the First World War. He's a soldier in the First World War, 10 plus years earlier. He was the drummer boy. In the 1920s, he makes bridges. He's employed. He's a builder. He makes bridges. He makes towers. But then suddenly he has no money, and he sees someone. He begs them for a dime. He's desperate for a dime. Brother, can you spare a dime? Is the theme of this. And it's a song that really touched people's hearts because it has this poignant human quality to it. And it was one of the most popular songs of 1931, which is when we're really in the middle of the Depression. It was written by the team Jay Gurney, who's actually best known for this song, and Yip Harburg wrote the words. Yip Harburg, very well-known lyricist, later to have huge hits with songs like Over the Rainbow, here pretty much at the start of his career. Anyway, this is Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? Once I built a railroad, made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once I built a tower to the sun, brick and rivet and lime. Once I built a tower, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits, gee, we look swell, full of that Yankee doodly-dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell. I was the kid with the drum. Say, don't you remember they called me Al? It was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember I'm your pal? Buddy, can't you spare a dime? In khaki suits, gee, we look swell, full of that Yankee doodly-dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell. I was the kid with the drum. Say, don't you remember they called me Al? It was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember I'm your pal? Buddy, can't you spare a dime? So that's Take on the Depression number 1. Take on the Depression number 2 is at the opposite extreme. This is a song from a very popular movie from 1933 called Gold Diggers of 1933. It was written by the songwriting team of Harry Warren and Al Dubin. And it's sometimes songs that appear in movies just sort of die out. This one didn't. And part of the reason why is that it was when the Broadway show 42nd Street was put together in the 1980s. It was featured in that, and the reason was it's just a really great song. So how is this different from the first song? The song is called the Gold Diggers Song. Remember, the movie is called The Gold Diggers of 1933. The Gold Diggers Song, and also known as We're in the Money. Well, I think you know from the title how it's different. So this is like, everything's fine now. The economy's recovered. Everything's fine. We've got money. Everything's great. So this was, obviously pure escapism. And for the time that the movie lasted, probably people felt much, much better while this was going on, and helped by the fact that the song is just so alive and so sort of just buoyant and lovely. So this is the Gold Diggers Song. And by the way, it has one of the strangest verses of any song. It starts like this. Gone are my blues, and gone are my tears. I've got good news to shout in your ears. The silver dollar has returned to the fold. With silver you can turn your dreams to gold. We're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. We're in the money, the skies are sunny. Old man depression, you are through, you've done us wrong. We never see a headline about a breadline today. And when we see that landlord, we can look that guy right in the eye. We're in the money. Come on, my honey. Let's spend it, lend it, send it, rolling along. Here we go. To get along, we're in the money, the skies are sunny. Old man depression, you are through, you've done us wrong. We never see a headline about a breadline today. And when we see that landlord, we can look that guy right in the eye. We're in the money, we're in the money. Old man depression, you are through, you've done us wrong. We're in the money. Take number 3 on the Depression is a song from 1933, I believe. And this is what you might call higher philosophy. Remember how the first song I played, the Brother Can You Spare a Dime, sort of put you right in the middle of it. This song really tries to transcend the trauma in a different way, in a very sort of higher way, by saying, like, what does it all matter? We're only here temporarily. And it says, life is just a bowl of cherries. Who really cares about that? And again, as with these other songs, these songs were enormously popular. They really spoke to people. And I think that in a way they were very therapeutic for them. And it really offers a very deep sense of consolation. This is a really very remarkable song, I think. And it was written by Brown and Henderson I can't remember their first names, Ray Henderson and Lou Brown, I think, of the songwriting team of De Silva, Brown and Henderson. Lesser known people, but what fantastic song. Here we go. People are strange, they're always crowing, scrambling and rushing about. Why don't they stop someday address themselves this way. Why are we here? Where are we going? It's time that we found out. We're not here to stay. We're on a short holiday. Life is just a bowl of cherries. Don't make it serious. Life's too mysterious. You work, you save, you worry so, but you can't take your dough when you go, go, go. So keep repeating it's the berries. The strongest oak must fall. The sweet things in life to you are just loaned. So how can you lose what you've never owned? Life is just a bowl of cherries. So live and laugh at it all. So keep repeating, it's the berries. The strongest oak must fall. The deep things in life to you are just loaned. So how can you lose what you've never owned? Life is just a bowl of cherries. So live and laugh at it. Don't mind half of it. Live and laugh at it all. Beautiful song, right? So that's 3 takes on the Depression in popular song form. Let's talk about instrumental music now. Now, the instrumental medium of the modality of the 1930s, meaning it wasn't very prevalent before and it wasn't very prevalent after, but really it just exploded in the 1930s, was the big band, right? The big band. You've seen them all in the old movies. You have maybe 15 brass, trumpets, trombones, saxophones, rhythm section, and that provided some of the most popular music of the era. Names like Benny Goodman, so-called King of Swing, Duke Ellington, I've already mentioned, African-American band leader, Jimmy Lunceford, another African-American band leader, Artie Shaw, wonderful clarinetist, and all these have bands, and this is the music of the era. More quintessential. It's really big band music. So what was new and different about big bands? Well, they'd had very similar types of bands in the 1920s called dance bands. But what happened with the big bands was the big bands became more swingier, kind of a little hotter, and combined with jazz. They really fused with jazz. What in particular about jazz? Improvisation. Improvisation became a big thing in the big bands. And when we think of jazz, we think of music that's sort of very free. And the big band music was not quite like that, but therein, I think, was its success. There were very organized elements, which I'm going to show you, but there were also free elements, namely the improvisation. And the two came together and worked in a very harmonious, symbiotic type of way to create just a remarkable, unique music that is absolutely quintessential to the 1930s. So the song, I'm going to work with one particular song, and that is Take the A Train. Take the A Train was the theme song of the Duke Ellington band. I keep coming back to Duke Ellington because he's just such a major figure in this era. It was written by an associate of his who was also African-American called Billy Strayhorn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate some of the techniques and things that were being used in the instrumental field at this time, where they were quintessentially 1930s. So first of all, I'm going to start off just by playing you the tune. Okay, it's an unusual tune, and did I mention this was actually the Ellington theme song for many years. Every band had its own theme song that said, "This is who I am." So in some ways, this said who Ellington was. Here's the main theme. Next section. Back to the first section. Okay, now, and that will sound familiar, I'm sure, to many of you, but to those who don't, just cling on to this. Okay, so I'm going to show you some transformations of that. Now, as I said, so one of the transformations was what we call close harmony, or block harmony, it's sometimes known as, which is when a whole section of the orchestra, for instance, the saxophones, would take and harmonize the line sort of in parallel, right? So everything was moving together. That sounds very theoretical, but here's how it would sound. See, imagining in one of the big bands like the Count Basie band, they would have 5 saxophones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each would be playing his part. Here's how it sounds with this song. It's actually very difficult to do with the hand because I'm trying to be 5 saxophonists there. But can you hear that? That gives a very characteristic swing big band kind of sound. If you ever heard those bands, you'll hear that type of thing going on a lot. Another thing that would happen would be that keeping that style, but there would be back and forth, what's called verse and response, or sometimes called antiphonal writing. So say the saxophones would do this. And say the trombones would reply with. Saxophones. Trombones. So there's a sense of question and answer. Question, saxophones. Answer. Oh, sorry. Then the answer. And that way you could build up choruses, and you could do, or you could really build up. All right. Another thing that came in with the big band sound was not unique to big bands, though, but is absolutely came in the 1930s and has been an essential part of jazz ever since, was what we call a walking bass. That at that point was literally played by double bass player. Before that, like the bass lines in the 1920s bands were played sometimes by the double bass, by the tube, sometimes by the tuba. Once you hit the 1930s, the swing, the double bass gave the sound that people wanted. So for that same sequence, this is how a walking bass would, and it's called walking bass because they just walk around. Okay, it's like just somebody's walking around the room, right? That's a walking bass. That style came in at that point. With the melody, it sounds like this. Okay, so you got that. Yeah, I mean there are other things too, but those give you like just this is very much part of the language. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fool around with this song for a little bit. I'm going to sort of improvise around on it and sort of make things up, and just give you a whole complete performance of it, and use some of these techniques in partly modified form for piano, because you can't much. Though I'm proud of my piano technique, I can't actually cover the ground of 15 musicians. So anyway, here we go. This is Take the A Train, Billy Strayhorn. Okay, so that was Big Bad 101 on the piano. Now, let's talk about the songs of the 1930s. We talked about depression, like the ones about the depression, but let's just talk generally about the songs. The first thing to say, to amplify something I said before, is that when I was preparing this talk, I thought, well, what can you really say about the songs that were written in the 1930s? Because there were so many of them. And what I realized is if you took each of the like very famous songwriters of Tin Pan Alley, for instance, Jerome Kern, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin, Richard Rodgers, Harold Arlen, can't think who I've left out, like one or two others that are recognized as sort of the gods of American popular song, you know, from the golden era, so-called golden era. The 1930s was the only decade in which they were all very active and very creative. 1920s, for instance, no Cole Porter, or not very much, or Harold Arlen, not very much. for example. 1940s, Jerome Kern, for example, died in 1945, for instance. So it's the 30s is really, really, really the peak, I would say, of songwriting. And so how on earth to characterize it and talk about what you know, to give you a sense of what it is and what's different about it? I'm going to use as a sort of, what's the word, like a poll to measure it against, a song sort of chosen at random from the 1920s, okay? So that you can hear how these songs are different, because you're going to hear they're pretty dramatically different. Now, I know that when you pick songs like that, you can do it in a way that exaggerates the points you're making, but just take it from me. They're relatively representative. An iconic song from the 1920s with a very iconic song from the 1930s, okay? Now, the iconic song from the 1920s is Yes, Sir, That's My Baby, okay? Let me just sing it through once. Yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, I don't mean maybe. Yes, sir, that's my baby now. Yes, ma'am, we've decided. No, ma'am, we won't hide it. Yes, ma'am, you're invited now. Oh, by the way, when we reach the preacher, I'll say, yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, I don't mean maybe. Yes, sir, that's my baby now. Now, if you compare that with the three songs I've already given you from the 1930s, can you hear that's got an innocence about it? It's like these people, the people in this song, they haven't known a depression, they haven't known trauma. Which is a bit ironic because everybody had just come out the First World War, which is another story. But can you hear? It's happy, it's uncomplicated, it's absolutely delightful. It's bouncy wouncy. It has, you know, it's very strongly 2/4. That has that very strong 2/4 feeling. It's very jazzy. It's wonderful, but it's a bit fluffy. Like there's not a huge amount of depth here. Even in those three songs which I've already given you, can you see they're trying in a way to be much deeper? They've got a much more sort of purpose to them. And that purpose was to help people get through the depression. We're going to focus on one song now and look at it in some detail, just to give you a sense of, I mean, how to pick from this. But the song I've picked is Cole Porter's Night and Day from 1933. It's 1932, I think, actually. It was a very popular song in its day, popularized by Fred Astaire, and it's remained popular ever since. So it's a classic song from the era. But I think more than anything, Cole Porter particularly, I think, embodies the 1930s. The 1930s was his era. He sort of, more than anybody else, innovated popular music in the 1930s, popular songwriting in the 1930s. So Night and Day, You Are the One. You probably heard it. Let me give you the whole song, including the verse, which, as you'll see, is very important. And then we're going to break it down a little bit. Okay, here we go. Like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom when the jungle shadows fall. Like the tick, tick, tock of a stately clock as it stands against the wall. Like the drip, drip, drip of the raindrop when a summer shower is through. So a voice within me keeps repeating, you, you, you. Night and day, you are the one. Only you beneath the moon and under the sun. Whether near to me or far, it's no matter, darling, where you are, I think of you. Night and day, day and night. Why is it so that this longing for you follows wherever I go? In the roaring traffic spume, In the silence of my lonely room, I think of you. Night and day, night and day, under the height of me. There's oh such a hungry yearning burning inside of me, but its torment won't be through till you let me spend my life making love to you day and night, night and day. Night and day, under the height of me, there's oh such a hungry yearning burning inside of me, and its torment won't be through till you let me spend my life making love to you day and night, night and day, day and night, night and day, like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom, like the tick, tick, tock of a stately clock, like the drip, drip, drip of the raindrops, night and day. If you haven't heard that song before, or if you haven't heard the whole of it, like including the verse, isn't that just an amazing song? I just think it's as good as any song ever written by anybody in any era in any country, at least on this planet. So let's talk about what is distinctive about that song and what is distinctively 30s about it. First of all, let's just break down the music. We're going to break it down into the melody, the harmony, the words. Probably that will keep us busy. In terms of the words, can you hear how strange and disorienting this song is? The protagonist, he's got this obsession and he can't leave this person alone. It could almost be kind of creepy. But he has this obsession that is completely unfulfilled, that lives sort of within him, and somehow or other everything in the music is based and sort of personifies that and manifests it. For instance, in the verse, we have that monotone, right? Just the note, like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom, it just goes on in your head like tinnitus, right? It just goes on, and then it goes up to there, and then it comes up, and it goes down. And even when we get to the chorus, night and day, you are the one. If you just look at my hand here, can you see how the melody is hardly moving? Lots of repeated notes. Look how it creeps down. And then leaps all the way back up to where it started, which is a perfect embodiment musically of this idea of obsession. You can't leave them alone. So that's the melody, the words. And in terms of the actually, before we do that, I wanted to show you something about just very remarkable about the melody. Well, before we do that, just the question of repeating, like all these repeats and repeated notes and things. To come back to our 20s comparison, Yes Sir, That's My Baby, is actually not dissimilar in a certain way, because here's the melody. Well, that has some repetition too, which itself consists of repeated notes, but it's then done again. And it does it in quite a striking way that was unusual for that time. But can you hear the effect is totally different? Here in the Yes Sir, That's My Baby, it's because somebody's sort of bouncing up and down in the street talking excited about the fact that they're getting married, about to get married. And so it just has that. But here we go. Like the beep, beep, beat of the tom, tom. It's using almost a similar idea, but absolutely transformed in a completely different way. Okay. Now, another comparison is this between the two songs. I'm going to do something a bit unusual, but it has a specific purpose here. I'm going to show you how the melody and the bass line interact. Bass line, you don't consciously hear the bass line in a piece of music, but you do unconsciously process it. And very important is the relationship when you're writing a song between the melody and the bass line. What is the relationship between the two? Now, here's what it is in Yes Sir, That's My Baby. Listen to this. Okay, can you hear it? It's very simple, it's very consonant, there's no tension, and why should there be? The guy is super happy about the fact that he's getting married, okay? It just has that, you know, it's as I said, innocent, kind of. Now, listen to what Cole Porter does in the relationship between the two parts, between the melody and the bass line in Night and Day. I think I'll do it here, I think. Okay, I mean, isn't that already amazing? Can you hear that? There's the tension. Now listen to this. Isn't that remarkable? Like all these extreme dissonances, and again, just a remarkable depiction of this man's mind as he just is trying to work out what to do with this obsession. Just highly creative. Even by the standards of the 1930s, that's pretty dissonant. And then to accompany that, these very rich harmonies. Okay, so this is just the harmony for the Cole Porter Night and Day, the chorus. Listen to these chords. Remember where you are, I think. Okay, and that's just part of it. There's a lot more as well. Compare that with the chords for Yes Sir, That's My Baby. Yes Sir, That's My Baby. Da, 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 da. Okay, really simple, as I said, naive, whatever. How much is this Cole Porter and how much is this the 1930s? It's kind of both, as I say, but what you hear is the sophistication here. This is clearly a very unhappy reality-based situation of a guy walking around really unhappy. Do you really feel that Yes Sir, That's My Baby is reality-based? Yes Sir, That's My Baby. Oh, she said we're going to get married. Question for you: if they're going to get married, they're looking for a preacher and stuff. When did they meet? I get the impression they probably met at a sort of a party in a speakeasy, like maybe 2 nights before, and they just fell wildly in love and decided to get married. Do you think the marriage is going to last? I have my doubts about that. The guy in Night and Day, doesn't look like he's going to get as far as getting married, I have to say. I can imagine him at the age of 85 having lived a very solitary life and existence. But so it's all very different. But so it's interesting. But the point about this, the word is sophistication. The 1930s popular songs are very sophisticated, and the harmony is more complex, more challenging. From this point of view, Night and Day is absolutely typical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you in a few minutes, within the time frame of a few minutes, a sort of bird's eye view of 1930s popular songs. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. I've taken 6 iconic songs written between 1932 and 1937. These were amongst the most popular of the day. And I've structured them like threading pearls into a necklace into a narrative. Okay, all right. And we're using, as I said, some of the most popular composers and everything, the top composers of the day, some of the top songs. And I thought I would then turn, so it's going to be like a song cycle in art music. We're going to be sort of telling a story. Here's the story. It's a foggy day. It's London town, and you're feeling low. And then you gaze and you see the most beautiful girl, you fall in love with her. Okay? That's A Foggy Day in London Town by George and Ira Gershwin from 1937. Okay? But you cannot, unless she's not declaring her love for you, and unless she does, nothing is real. It's only a paper moon, you sing to her, sailing over it all to yourself. It's only a paper moon, or to the world. It's only a paper moon sailing over a cardboard sea. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. He said, well, I guess it's to her. You believed in me, right? So if she just believed in him and she told him she loved him, then everything would be real, okay? That's Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg, 1933, I think. Okay. She says, yes. Ecstatically happy, you sing her a paean, a witty, sophisticated, sassy paean, telling her that she is your funny Valentine. Richard Rogers and Hart, Larry Hart, 1937 also, I think, My Funny Valentine. At the dance, you go to the dance, you dance with her cheek to cheek, and you're in heaven. Cheek to cheek, 1936, Irving Berlin. But then she leaves you. You're so lonely and blue. You sit yourself down and you write yourself a letter and pretend it comes from her. This is from 1935. I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter. And the composers are Alert and Turk, I think. Lesser known people, but very popular song. Finally, you get word that she went with someone else, and then he kicked her out, to which you say, Goody Goody. Goody Goody, 1937, words by Johnny Mercer, music by Matty Malneck. Okay, so we're going to put this into a big sort of cycle. So enjoy the story I'm going to be telling. Here we go. I was a stranger in the city, out of town were the people I knew. I had that feeling of self-pity. What to do, what to do, what to do. The outlook was decidedly blue. But as I walked through the foggy streets alone, it turned out to be the luckiest day I've known. A foggy day in London town. It had me low, it had me down. I viewed the morning with alarm. The British Museum had lost its charm. How long, I wondered, could this thing last? But the age of miracles hadn't passed, for suddenly I saw you there, and through foggy London town, the sun was shining everywhere. Say it's only a paper moon sailing over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Yes, it's only a canvas sky hanging over a muslin tree, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Without your love, it's a honky-tonk parade. Without your love, it's a melody played in a penny arcade. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. My funny Valentine, sweet comic Valentine, you make me smile with my heart. Your looks are laughable, unphotographable, yet you're my favorite work of art. Is your figure less than Greek? Is your mouth a little weak when you open it to speak? Are you smart? But don't change your hair for me, not if you care for me. Stay, little Valentine, stay. Each day is Valentine's Day. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I seek when we're out together dancing cheek to cheek. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and the cares that hang about me through the week seem to vanish like the gambler's lucky streak when we're out together dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I love to climb a mountain and to reach the highest peak, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but it doesn't thrill me half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Dance with me, I want my arms about you. The charms about you will carry me through to heaven. I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I seek when we're out together dancing. I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. I'm gonna write words oh so sweet. They're gonna knock me off my feet. A lot of kisses on the bottom. I'll be glad I got 'em. I'm gonna smile and say I hope you're feeling better. And close with love the way you do. I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter. I'll make believe it came from you. So you met someone who set your back on your heels. Goody goody, so you met someone and now you know how it feels. Goody goody, so you gave him your heart too, just as I gave mine to you, and he broke it in little pieces. Now how do you do? So you lie awake just singing the blues all night. Goody goody, though you think that love's a barrel of dynamite. Hooray and hallelujah, you got it coming to you. Goody goody for him, goody goody for me. And I hope you're satisfied, you rascal, you. Someone who set you back on your heels. Goody goody, so you met someone and now you know how it feels. Goody goody, so you gave him your heart too, just as I gave mine to you, and he broke it in little pieces. Now how do you do? So you lie awake just singing the blues all night. Goody goody, so you think that love's a barrel of dynamite. Hooray and hallelujah, you got it coming to ya. Goody goody for him, goody goody for me. And I hope you're satisfied, I hope you're satisfied, hope you're satisfied, you rascal, you. There you go, the 1930s song cycle. Last part of my program, we're back to instrumental music, and we're talking about an instrumental style that became immensely popular in the 1930s. This is Boogie Woogie, okay? And unlike the big band style, this is actually piano based, so I can hopefully demonstrate it more fully. Boogie Woogie has its origins going back, the origins have been traced back to the very early 1900s. But it was all in the African-American subculture. It didn't move into the mainstream until the 1930s and the end of the decade at that, right about 1938, 39. Suddenly there was this big Boogie Woogie explosion. So what is Boogie Woogie? The basis of Boogie Woogie, and I said it's a piano style. So if we just put the camera on my hands here, it's my left hand is doing what are called riffs, which are repeated figures. For instance, this. Just playing the same thing over and over again as a way of building up tension, and it creates a kind of hypnotic effect. Riffs themselves are African-American. They come from African-American vernacular style, or the folk tradition, and it's actually those have actually been traced back to Africa. Just there's a lot of things like that in African drumming, for instance, where patterns are repeated, and they have this sort of quasi hypnotic effect. Boogie Woogie, as I said, became popular in the 1920s, but just with African American communities. And then 1938, it started to be integrated into big band culture, particularly through Tommy Dorsey had a hit recording, and others at the same time. And suddenly, Boogie Woogie was mainstream. It was like a really big thing. And that was actually a really good thing on a person-to-person basis, because African American pianists were on the whole not well treated, and they were not well supported. But suddenly everybody wanted to hear them. People like Albert Ammons, just marvelous musicians, Meade Lux Lewis, people like that, just remarkable. Anyway, I'm going to play you the most popular Boogie Woogie of all, which is Pinetop's Boogie Woogie. Pinetop was Pinetop Smith, who recorded it. I didn't say he composed it, because the main theme here was known sometime earlier. It's kind of like sort of like a folk theme, but he's very much associated with this song. He was very young at the time he recorded this. So he was still in his teens, actually, and he recorded it in 1928 for what was called the race record market, which was when the record companies distributed songs to African American audiences. So it stayed within the African American at that point in the late 20s. It became very popular in that, and it was picked up by the white big band leaders in the 1930s. Tommy Dorsey had, as I said, a huge hit with this. And it's just great music. What can I tell you? So I'm going to do this for you now. Oh, and I should say also the relationship, Boogie Woogie has a relationship to another African American style, which is blues. And although the two are not joined at the hip, you can have Boogie Woogie without blues, and you can have blues without Boogie Woogie. A lot of the early manifestations of Boogie Woogie were in a blues context. And this piece I'm going to play you is a blues. It's a 12-bar blues. This is Pinetop's Boogie Woogie. Okay, my version of it. Here we go. Isn't that great? Pinetop's Boogie Woogie, and that feeling with music is what came in the 1930s into the mainstream from the African American culture. Can you hear rock and roll in that? Right, there's jailhouse rock right there, right? And so you could Boogie Woogie is just so important for the integration of styles that was later to morph into rock and roll, like what, 2 decades later, like the 1950s. So there's that. Now I want to show a different side of Boogie Woogie now, because if you know Boogie Woogie, you probably think of music like that, sort of totally extrovert kind of happy party music. But there's this other side to it that is not well known, and I just wanted to share with you. It focuses, I'm going to focus on the work of one of the most remarkable Boogie Woogie pianists, a fellow called Jimmy Yancey. He was unknown really until the late 1930s. He was born in the late 1890s, and he was one of the pioneers of Boogie Woogie, African American, of course. And he started to be recorded in the late 1930s, and some of his recordings caused a sensation. And it's a very different style. It's a more introverted, sort of more artistic style, and probably different from what you've heard, or what you think of. And in this is truly blues, so that he goes into the depth of the blues and combines that with the riff feeling of the Boogie Woogie to create this music that is hypnotic and static, and sort of like time seems to sort of stop still. All right. And specifically, there's a particular riff that's associated with him, one of these left-hand patterns that's associated with him. It's called actually the Yancey bass in his honor. Now, compared to most Boogie Woogie riffs, you can hear it's very slow. At least I'm playing it very slowly. Like a typical, like the one I played in that last piece is this. Slowed it to the same speed. Can you hear it's much denser? It's got a lot more notes. This has space in it. And you think, well, how could you build a piece out of that? It's so simple. But he that was his genius. He was able to do that. So this is his take on his style, really, that I'm going to do on a traditional blues called How Long Blues. How long has this old train been gone? How long, baby, how long? Went down to the station, couldn't see no train. Looked up the tracks, my heart full of pain. How long, how long, how long? If I had wings, I'd fly like Noah's dove. I fly to the one I love. How long has my baby been gone? How long, oh how long? Isn't that just a beautiful atmosphere that song has? That was Jimmy Yancey. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention about him. As I said, he was African American. Never made a good living from piano playing. Became sort of, there were connoisseurs, became like connoisseurs amongst his white audience who sought him out, but he never had a mass following. And in fact, you know what he did for a living? For 25 years, he was the gameskeeper for the Chicago White Sox. Like the groundskeeper for the Chicago White Sox. That's what he did for a living. He was a poor, so very humble man, and just very soulful. So nice to be able to celebrate him. Well, that's kind of our whistle stop tour for the 1930s. And I thought we'd finish with something that's like swing style, but seasonal, right? So please relax while I attempt a spontaneously created version of Swingle Bells.